Hello, my sewing buddies, and welcome to the channel. Today, I am going to show you how to make a simple wedding guest outfit or wedding guest dress.
A few days ago, I asked you on my Instagram and on my YouTube post which fabric I should use for this project. You guys chose this fabric that I am super thankful that you did. Okay, so without further ado, let's get right to it.
For the pattern pieces, I will be using these, the ones that I drafted from a basic bodice blocks. If you don't have one yet, I have a tutorial showing you how to measure your body and create the basic block. I also have a shortcut version and you don't need any measuring. You're just going to trace it out of a dress. So I'm just going to have the links in the description box below. I also have a tutorial on how to create a half circle skirt. I'm just going to have the info at the end screen. After I cut out the bottom piece or the skirt, this is all what's left. I have about half a yard of fabric. So now I'm just going to cut out the details for the bodice. So I place this center front on fold. I already added seam allowances on the pattern, so I don't have to do that when cutting. I don't know what type of fabric is this, but it reminds me of a crinkle of fabric and a gauze fabric. I actually bought this from High Fashion Fabrics when my family and I went to Sacramento, California. Anyhow, speaking of wedding season, I want to know, when is the perfect month for you to get married? If I need to answer my own question, it's December. My husband and I got married on the month of December. I purposely chose that month just because it is festive, happy, it's beautiful, Christmas lights are everywhere. So, yeah, I couldn't imagine myself getting married in June in the Philippines because it is rainy and depressing. I associate June as the beginning of school year, and I couldn't imagine myself getting married on that month. Now it's time to cut out the sleeves. I actually use my existing sleeve pattern for this. I just kind of made it extra large just because I want the fabric or the sleeves to be longer and kind of voluminous. And here I am marking where I'm going to sew a basting stitch so I can ease the sleeves in the armholes. This dress is going to be fully lined, so I cut out the lining pieces and it's the same as the shell fabric. So basically everything I cut out for the shell fabric, it's going to be the same for the lining pieces. And for the sleeves, we don't need to line it, so we only need two pieces. And this is the lining for the skirt. Now it's time to construct the bodice. So I match the side seams, right sides of the fabrics are facing, and I'm just going to stitch along where I place the clips. Everything you do on the shell fabric is going to be repeated on the lining. Now it's time to join the back. So I match the side seams, stitch along the edge. I use 1/2 inch seam allowance for this pattern. After that, I press the seams. I also top stitch the seams just because the fabric is so thin. I just wanted to add some stability to the fabric. So now it's time to join the lining to the bodice, and here I mark where the deep V is going to be. I am going to stitch along just on the neckline about 1/2 inch, and we're going to leave the arm side alone. This is a new technique that I just learned just by figuring it out, and it worked, and I'm so happy to share them with you guys. So this is how you add a lining to a bodice. In here, I am just going to take my time just because the neckline has a curve and a deep V. So I'm just carefully sewing and making sure that my fabric is not going to move while I sew. That's why it is very important to mark where the deep V is so you can easily see it when you pivot the fabric. This is the moment of truth. This was actually the actual clip when I realized that my plan worked. So basically, you are going to turn the fabric right side out. I was actually very nervous that it's not going to work because I don't want to seam rip the neckline just because the fabric is so thin and I don't want to ruin it. So now I'm just going to clip the corners and the curve. I'm just going to grade it so when I turn the fabric right side out, the neckline is going to sit flat and fabulous. Can you see the difference that it makes? It just kind of released the tension along the curve and it just gave you a nice crisp corners. Now it's time to press the seams open. After that, I am going to understitch the lining. Doing that will make sure that the lining will stay hidden inside the garment.
This is my husband's socks. I'm just borrowing.
If you don't own a tailor's hem, you can just do what I'm doing here. I don't have a tailor's hem and I plan on making one of these days. After that, I'm going to press the seams to give it a professional looking finish. After that's done, I am going to understitch the lining. Now it's time to join the shoulders. So I open up the shoulders and I'm going to match the shell fabric to the shell fabric and lining to the lining. Right sides of the fabrics are facing each other and I will do the same steps to the other shoulder. So open up the shoulders, match the lining pieces together, and be sure that the right sides of the fabrics are facing, and then stitch along the shoulders following a 1/2 inch seam allowance. After that's done, it should look like this, and it is so pretty. I trim off some excess seam allowance from the inside just because I want to get rid of the bulk. So when you do that, be careful that you don't cut through the actual seam. Now it's time to work on the bottom of the dress. This is pretty easy and straightforward. You have seen me done this so many times. Basically, the skirt is going to be just one panel. That's why I mark where the center of the skirt panel and the center of the bodice. And I'm just going to match it. And everything I do on the lining, it's going to be repeated on the shell or vice versa. If you like circle skirt or circle skirt dresses, I do have a tutorial on how to draft it. It's so easy to do and it's going to be your own measurements. I have used this circle skirt pattern in a lot of my dresses and skirts too. So that's why it is so much easier if you have the pattern already. So when you feel like sewing, it's already on hand and you don't have to keep on drafting it. After that, I am going to stitch along the waistline. With the lining, I just use my serger, or you can do a zigzag stitch or stretch stitch for this. If I didn't mention earlier, I stay stitch the skirt waistline so it will prevent it from stretching out. Now it's time to work on the sleeves. As you can see, I am going to hem the sleeves first, so I'm going to be double rolling it and I'm going to sew along on the top for gathering, actually for easing. I will be using this hammer foot and it's about 3/8 of an inch round. I finger press the edge of the fabric so I can create a crease, so it's going to be much easier to insert it in the tube or in the hammer foot right here. The first couple of stitches is a little annoying or kind of tricky, but once you get the hang of it, it's actually very easy. Just make sure that you don't put too much fabric in. Using this hammer foot is perfect for lightweight fabric. And I mean, you can double roll it manually. First, you're going to fold it and then stitch along and then fold it one more time. So that is the another way to do that. But if you are adventurous and you want to try new things, try this hammer foot. I promise you it's going to be a life changer or a game changer. Here I am marking about 1 inch away from the hemline, and I wanted to shear this part so it's going to have that roughly effect on the sleeve hems. So I place the bobbin thread with an elastic thread, and then I'm just going to pick it up just like a normal bobbin thread, and I'm going to place it at the back, and then I change stitch length to the longest setting I could get, and then I'm going to shear on the correct side of the fabric. And then I secure the ends of the elastic thread. And if you are not satisfied with the gathering, you can actually adjust it manually. Now it's time to close the seams. I base stitch the armholes so I can treat the fabrics as one, and it's going to be much easier to insert the sleeves. Remember the gather stitch on the shoulder? I kind of gather it a little bit just to I can ease it inside the sleeves, and then I'm going to stitch along. So now the dress is about 90% done. I'm going to let it drape overnight just because the skirt is cut on a bias. It's going to drape and it will make the hemlines uneven. Look at the hemline. Look how much longer it is now compared to yesterday. Can you imagine if you hem a circle skirt right away? It's going to look terrible like this. So now it's time to give it a haircut. Here I am just going to make sure that everything is even. So I decided to go for 27 inches, and I'm going to cut the remaining off. I'm also going to finish it using a hammer foot, just like I did with the sleeves. And you guys, I absolutely love this hammer foot. I love it. So you should try it too. After that, I apply the invisible zipper. After a second attempt, I finally was able to match the back seams properly because this fabric moves a lot, and yeah, it's very tricky to work with. It's time to finish the lining. As you can see, I just fold the lining, sandwiching the zipper inside, and I'm just going to stitch from here down to the zipper, like almost to the end of the zipper. This is the final look. I absolutely love it. And yeah, I think this dress is so sweet and girly. It's so dreamy.
I made this bow, and this actually I'm still kind of decided if whether I need to put that tail back here or remove it. Let me know if it's too childish. I will just remove the tail and just leave the giant bow. I didn't realize it was such a big bow until I put it on my head. It's just like boom, a bow. That's it, you guys, and thanks so much for watching. And if you would like to see more from Aldo DIY, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And if you voted for this fabric, be sure to give this a thumbs up because I chose what you wanted.